The most important reason for assessing young children is to support their learning and development. Gathering accurate assessment information from young children is challenging. Child development specialists and educators have long known that young children learn through doing as well as listening, and they often represent their knowledge better by showing than by talking or writing. This means that determining the most effective methods of assessment are vital. Best practice recommendations help inform us about appropriate and meaningful assessment methods for young children. Methods need to be developmentally appropriate, culturally and linguistically responsive, reflective of typical and familiar activities to the child, inclusive of family input, and connected to specific and beneficial purposes. Those purposes are to monitor child development and learning, to guide planning and decision-making, to identify special needs requiring focused interventions, to help programs improve their educational and developmental interventions, to report to and collaborate with families and colleagues. For all Indiana preschool students receiving special education in the school system, their providers are required to use the Indiana Standards Tool for Assessment Reporting, Kindergarten Readiness, or ISTAR KR as it is commonly known. The state requires ISTAR KR data entry a minimum of 2 times per year at entrance to preschool special education services and exit from preschool special education services. However, many preschool educators choose to use ISTAR KR as a quarterly progress monitoring tool. ISTAR was developed over 10 years ago as a web-based standards reference tool reflecting child skills from birth to 10th grade. ISTAR KR is a revision of the original ISTAR Early Childhood Performance Items based on the results of a 2006 reliability, alignment, and validation research. In 2009, standardization research of ISTAR KR was conducted, which assigned age ranges in months of when a typically developing child would demonstrate each of the early childhood performance items. There are 2 academic standard areas of ISTAR KR. They are mathematics and English language arts. In addition, there are 3 functional areas. They are social, emotional, physical, and personal care skills. Teachers rate a student's degree of mastery in each of the 5 areas of ISTAR KR. The performance items are presented in a continuum of progressively complex skills from least mature progressing to kindergarten standards. This video serves as a resource to Indiana school districts considering the supplemental use of ISTAR KR during the special education processes of referral, evaluation, and development of the initial individual education program for preschool-aged children. 3 Indiana school corporations have participated in this video to describe their use of ISTAR KR. In a question and answer format, the content will cover reasons to use ISTAR KR at referral and as a supplemental tool at evaluation, strategies for using ISTAR KR at referral and evaluation, the impact of using ISTAR KR during evaluation and initial goal development, the use of ISTAR KR to monitor student progress, and how ISTAR KR has enhanced communication and collaboration with families and colleagues.
To get more information during that evaluation so that when we wrote the IEP, it would really give a better picture of the child going into the classroom.
Well, for us it made perfect sense to include ISTAR KR as part of the evaluation process because the assessments that we use in evaluation are directly aligned with many of the aspects of ISTAR KR. And we value the parent input. And it's very, very important to have parent input on the ISTAR KR and to expect the teacher of record to evaluate and assess using ISTAR KR without the parent input doesn't give us a true picture of the child. So it gives us a much clearer picture of the child with the parent.
I was searching for something that was an assessment tool and also some type of an evaluation that was across the board. And so we could use it with our general ed population as well as our special ed population. We used ISTAR KR for all of our special ed students, but knowing that I have some 100 general education students, I wanted to align our process. And so when that tool was found, we would be able to use it for gen ed and also special ed. And ISTAR KR fit the bill. It had assessment possibilities, it had curriculum possibilities, it had goal writing possibilities, and so when we looked at all the components that we wanted to offer our teachers and our families, ISTAR KR fit the bill.
We piloted this program for about 6 weeks. We did 5 families in the beginning, and then we expanded it to a full semester, but we only chose the families that were First Steps intake. So these children had been receiving services from First Steps, and those were also the children that I actually got to go into the home and actually see the child, talk to the parents a little bit more. So what I did was I created a kind of a template type form on my laptop so that when I was in the home of the First Steps child, I could either gather the information from the parent, from the therapist, or actually observe that child. And then I would bring that back to the evaluation team, and they would have kind of the beginning of what I saw. And then from then they would carry on from that.
Yes, when I meet with the parent, with the service coordinator for First Steps at their transition meeting, we do go over a lot of things that the child is doing at home. How do they look at home? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And as the parents talk to you, you gather so much information of their daily life. What are they doing? So we will see, I'll find a lot of the personal care items from ISTAR KR will be reflected in my notes at the transition meeting. Also, the receptive and expressive language, those items too, they will also, the gross motor skills will be, they'll also share those, and you can visually see them, especially if the child is home, and you can observe how they're climbing over the furniture and how they're interacting with their siblings and so on. So you can get to start on the ISTAR KR right there at their home.
At intake, Linda, who does our parent intakes, and I both have a copy of ISTAR KR with us for that student, and we start filling out the items from what we see at the intake if the child is present, what the parent is saying about their development, and then from our social history questionnaire too. We get some things off there and we begin filling it out. Our children come into an evaluation classroom for 2 half days, and they participate with other students. So I am in there looking to see what they're doing. I'm doing things like the Bracken and the Connors, and then I'm also doing ISTAR KR while I'm assessing them, and it crosswalks a lot with some of the other tests that we use.
So what we did, we took ISTAR KR and we broke up the domains, and each discipline was responsible for certain domains. The SLPs had domains that they were going to be looking at during the evaluation. The psych had domains that she was going to be looking at. The teacher had domains, so they all had their own separate domain on where they were going to be looking at.
Based on what our intake person, what Pat finds out at the initial meeting, as far as the child's needs, it determines who's present for the evaluation. So if they have gross motor needs, we'll have a physical therapist there. Fine motor needs, OT will be there. Speech needs, speech will be there. And then we in a group environment, we do our assessments. And then those assessments a lot of times align with the ISTAR KR. So a lot of the skills that we're finding in our assessments, we can fill out the ISTAR KR based on our own assessments that we're already doing. A lot of times, sometimes we need to ask the family, or some of the things that Pat found during the intake, the child has made progress. So we ask the family those questions to answer some of those responses on the ISTAR KR. We have a paper form of it, and after the evaluation we collaborate as a team and we fill it out. We kind of pass it around and we fill out our own areas, and then the areas that we're not able to fill out, we ask each other questions about what they saw, because sometimes you don't see everything. One person doesn't see it all in the evaluation. So it kind of is a collaborative effort.
ISTAR KR is so thorough in looking at so many different areas of development that you get a much better picture of the whole child when you use that instrument. I especially notice this if I'm doing a speech evaluation by myself, or maybe it's just there are no OT or PT concerns, so it would be the diagnostician and myself doing the evaluation. So that forces us to remember to look at other areas besides the one that we're focusing on to begin with. So that's a big advantage.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a checklist for every domain along with a narrative that we write about what the child did, but on the checklist are ISTAR KR items as well as other things that our therapists want to look at. We collect the data, and at the end of the evaluation time I have all the sheets that they've used, and then after I do their report they are in Learning Connection, and I just go in and it's a matter of clicking. I can look at the sheet and click them in, and it's pretty fast once you get used to it.
I think you see it in the observation a lot, in the things that they notice the child doing, because those are specific things. How ISTAR KR is, you're observing, you're seeing things. So in the observation you see that. You see that in present levels because they're looking at a variety of areas. They're trying to cover the whole child, not just certain aspects of the child. Even though there may only be certain concerns, they're looking at strengths, they're looking at overall progress of the child, overall present levels of the child. So you see it in that. You see it in the decisions they make on areas for goals, and you see it in the goal writing and in the services.
When we develop our goals and bring them to the case conference as proposed goals, then the parents too, when the therapist or diagnostician are discussing the proposed goals with the parent, they can also relate to, well, remember when we did this in the ISTAR KR, when we talked about this at the ISTAR KR, when we determined where the child fell, and then we use that that information to provide to propose the goal. So I think it helps the parent too to understand where these came, where did these come from, and then to better understand and to agree. And then oftentimes they may make some changes or request some additions or deletions, but at least they have a part in the original part of the goal-making process.
Well, I think you get to see where a child's needs are, because you're seeing they are doing a lot of different things within a thread, and you can say, oh, this is something we really need to work on, so they can move past to the next level, because it does kind of give you a continuum of how they learn and develop. So it kind of guides you that way. It kind of helps you see where they are, where they need to go, and how you can help them get there.
It's pretty much the same on my end as well. It gives us a really good picture of the whole child in those specific areas of deficit, whether it be the intake information, the things they've been seeing at home, or some new things that pop up once they're with the students in their classroom in a different, sometimes more structured environment. And it allows us to pinpoint exactly what we're going to focus on for the academic year that we're providing services, despite the context, whether it be in a community placement or in a developmental preschool classroom.
When we write present levels into the initial IEP, which is what helps us determine what the child's needs are, what academic areas, we use ISTAR KR items. For one thing, it's that common language again. So when I write what the pre-reading skills look like for this child, the classroom teacher who's going to be serving that child knows exactly what I'm talking about and can go right to ISTAR KR. And that helps us look and see, is this the need or not? Is this typical, looking at ISTAR KR in terms of development? Especially those benchmarks where we're kind of digging deeper and seeing what does this really look like. If this child's social skills are appropriate, these are the things that we want to see, and they're from ISTAR KR. teachers have said that their teaching is more intentional because of ISTAR KR. So when they're looking at those items, they're really thinking more about what they're doing with the students. And the fact that it's the same whether it's a special ed goal or it's just their general education students, it's all the same. It's all embedded into the curriculum.
I don't think we get much feedback from those therapists. We do have one location where we can email those people back and forth, and I think that they probably utilize that information as well as setting goals for the next year when they're revising for the annual case review, because the goals we've seen have looked like that information has been incorporated into that. So, but specific feedback, we've not had conversations with them to know.
In developing those goals for the next year too, you can kind of see the next thread of where you would want that child to be, and so that is a way that it helps and it assists in writing goals for the future.
I think it goes back to what Jean talked about, the intentionality of lesson plans. The intentionality of the lessons, not only in small group, in large group, intentionality in play. We see that happening every day in our classrooms. And ISTAR KR goes so well with our curriculum, which is high scope. And so once again, when you infuse that into the curriculum, you have that intentionality for each one of those threads in the matrix.
I think it gives us more than a 1 point in the year image of what the child is doing. It's something that can be ongoing. It's something that we can use to collect data, a specific data throughout the year, so that when it comes time for those pre-designated progress monitoring times in IEP, that we have that information already there. We have that information to go through and analyze. So for me in the classroom, it just gives me a more pieces of evidence to base my conclusions on, rather than just thinking about what that child is doing at that moment in time, based on maybe a day's worth of data you've collected.
Well, with the emphasis this year on the evaluation for teachers and data to support, we've taken each one of those threads in ISTAR KR and turned it into a data collection sheet. And so the teachers each week are doing progress monitoring with each one of those threads in ISTAR KR. That then becomes what they load into ISTAR KR so that they can report their data out to me during their evaluation conference. So not only are the special education students being tracked with their data in ISTAR KR, but also the general education population. Then once again, as I sit down with the teachers, we're talking the same language for every child that they see throughout the day.
Well, for progress monitoring, every 9 weeks they progress monitor the goals on Indiana IEP. So if the goal obviously had started at the basis of using ISTAR KR, then you also have that progress monitoring information data to update your assessment, ISTAR KR assessment. And in addition to that, I know our teachers here also use a separate progress monitoring for ISTAR KR, because not all areas of ISTAR KR have been addressed within a goal on the IEP. So you need both tools, but both complement one another.
I think it's really beneficial when when the teacher brings that information and has rated it and it comes out in a graph in a visual form. It's easier for parents to see in that graph form how their child has made progress from the baseline assessment that we created to the point that they are now since they've had services. So that's really helpful, I think, for parents to see it visually.
So if the child already has an ISTAR KR, I can just go in and look at it and use it as part of my evaluation. It already has laid out some of the skills that they have. So if I don't see that while they're here for their evaluation, I know what they can do from ISTAR KR.
We have community students, about 100 community students. So if we decide that we need to do a referral with that child, they already are loaded in ISTAR. They've already had ISTAR KR administered to them, and so that is just given to our referral teacher, and then she goes ahead with the evaluation. But I also think what's neat about this whole process is, once again, we're talking the same terms, using the same ideas for what we expect for our students. And so then that also helps us lead to what goals do we want to write for this child that was a community child and now in our special education program.
What happens when I have a First Steps child that is currently in early Head Start, when I bring them into Indiana IEP, since now we have them in Kokomo Center, then they are still in the process of ISTAR KR at Early Head Start. So I work with the service provider at Early Head Start, and when they're getting ready to do their exit out of Early Head Start and begin here with us, then I'll meet with them and we will put together, enter the information, enter the data in the assessment with their information. But then if it's a, within a few weeks of what we're doing our evaluation, completing our evaluation, we will use their assessment that they just completed. And then we have that information going into the evaluation so we know where the child is starting. So it helps the evaluation team a great deal. Same thing with an over 3-year-old child that's attending Keys for Kids. If they are have a current assessment, then we can print that out and use that as a paper form in order to check with the parent, are there any changes in development since the evaluation was last completed. So it's a very good, excellent working collaboration with a private agency.
It's just another level where we can have discussion and collaboration on students and what things we can do to enhance the learning of all the children, not just the kids that maybe I serve through special education, but we have been able to be on the same page with some of that, where it's brought us together. Instead of saying, well, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, this is what I do, we could do it together.
I have luckily had a little bit of experience working with some professionals who are using the same assessment tool, and like Brenda said, it's given us a common field to play on. The ISTAR KR is set up so nicely to have these benchmark accomplishments that the children need to have to master a certain skill, and they're pretty cut and dry, so there isn't a lot of room for teacher personality, so to speak. It's consistent. If you're seeing it one place, it's going to look the same in my classroom, and being able to compare and contrast what we're enabling the students to do, those skills in certain places. It's been great, a great way.
Well, I don't want to say it's pretty slam dunk, but it is. If you're using it already for your special education population and it has developmental levels for every child, it only makes sense to put that to your general education population. Once again, we're aligned, we're talking the same terms, we're using the same developmental levels for every child. And that then leads into your kindergarten and your first grade, as the matrix shows what levels those children should have. And what a great way to explain to parents, this is where we want to see your child by the time they leave our doors. So I think it's a great tool for assessment, it's a great tool to show parents developmental levels, and it's a great planning tool for the teachers.
For a person doing evaluations, I think the first thing I would say is it's paperless and it's online, because our time is valuable and we want to spend more time with children and less time doing paperwork. The other thing is that it coincides with what the teacher's going to do. So the teacher's not going to look at this assessment that's unrelated to curriculum and just kind of use it for eligibility. You're going to use it the whole way, and they're going to be able to actually use what you did at evaluation for that child in school.
I think Paula mentioned earlier, it helps us all to look at the whole child rather than just our own section, which we have a tendency to do anyhow, but this collaborative effort really then allows us to do that. I might fill out the physical stability or gross motor skills area or whatever, but I look at the other areas to see where people put them in that area too. And then when we're working with this child in the classroom or wherever, we're aware of those other areas and can use those things to help reinforce the language or the academic skills that they're needing. So I think that's the other advantage. And the main one I really feel like is the parent information. we are gaining it, and then we're giving it back to the parent, and they know they've had that, they've been valued and have that input. And then the annual graph is probably, to me, the most valuable part of it, is that they see in a very easy way how their child's made progress, and that's what they want to see.
First of all, it is a great tool. It's an excellent tool for any preschool age child. My advice would be is to make sure that your evaluation team, they're all on the same page, and they don't view it as just another assessment for a child. And they use it as a tool to, I need to look at the whole child and what areas where the child is. I think that's the greatest thing that they could do, because if they view it as another thing to do, then they're not going to be behind it so much. It just gets, oh, it's just a tool. This is something else I have to do. You know, you have to live it, do it, and it's easy. It's just one thing that will be natural to them.
Yeah, I think that my point is the same thing, is to take the time, if you don't believe someone telling you this, take the time to prove to yourself that this really is something that's been created to help you connect all the dots, so to speak, that it's already been done. It's not something extra. It's incorporated the Indiana Foundations. Indiana Foundations has incorporated ISTAR KR. All of the responsibilities that you have, whether it be in a general education setting or a special education setting, have been captured in this great assessment tool, this great curriculum guide, and to take the time to realize that, so you can get behind it and you can use it as effectively as possible, because it makes your classroom effective, and it makes the results very evident as to what your student learning is and what you're doing as a professional. So,
and the more you become familiar with it, the easier it is. So if you just look at it once a year, it may seem overwhelming, but when you start using it all the time, you are seeing it. You are seeing ways that you can incorporate a lot of direct teaching during play. You can see a lot of ways you can change things to bring more mathematical thinking to your program. So you really just need to not be afraid and just get familiar with it, and you will love it. There are multiple reasons for using ISTAR KR during referral, evaluation, and initial IEP development, including valuing and including family input, collecting assessment information that informs goal writing, curriculum, and lesson planning, streamlining progress monitoring. To these school districts, ISTAR KR was the logical choice to link referral, evaluation, goal development, lesson planning, and progress monitoring. Additionally, these districts reported their success of using ISTAR KR to provide a richer and more accurate view of the whole child, support the teacher of record with a more accurate baseline of skills, enhance team collaboration and strengthen school-family collaboration, and clarify child development and kindergarten readiness skills. The most important reason for assessing young children is to support their learning and development. To this end, assessments should be closely tied to preschool and early grade curricula and should be a natural part of instructional activities. ISTAR KR was designed for that purpose.